Welcome to Life Stories, where one woman walks into her brother's wedding, expecting family and celebration only to be seated in the kitchen like she didn't exist. What do you do when the people who are supposed to love you the most treat your success like an inconvenience? When your greatest achievement becomes their greatest threat? This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about power, self-worth, and the moment you decide to stop shrinking for anyone. Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you'll witness a choice so bold, so unforgettable, it might just make you question how you've let others define your value. Let's go back to where it all began. The champagne flute trembled slightly in Madison Carter's hand, though her expression remained composed. Just beyond the archway of wisteria and fairy lights, the wedding reception roared to life: string quartet, clinking glasses, designer heels tapping against marble. She stood at the edge of it all, invisible in a room she helped fund, among people who still treated her like a footnote. Madison had flown in from Los Angeles 2 nights earlier, trading boardrooms for ballrooms, leaving behind a $200 million empire she'd built from scratch. Vertex Systems, the software firm that just landed the most lucrative deal of its existence, a $30 million contract with Hawthorne Developments, the real estate empire headed by billionaire magnate Douglas Hawthorne. It should have been a celebration. Her company was powering the infrastructure of this very venue. But no one here saw her as a partner. They saw her as someone's sister. Her brother Tyler. The golden boy. They hadn't spoken in weeks, not since she'd discovered that her entire company had been curiously absent from the Hawthorne's internal communications. Not once had Tyler mentioned that his sister was behind the tech that now ran their supply chain. When Douglas Hawthorne complimented Vertex's demo during the engagement party, he'd looked genuinely stunned to learn she was Madison Carter the Carter. "You're Tyler's sister?" he'd asked, almost laughing. Tyler had just smiled and said, "She's always been into that tech stuff. Kinda made a business out of it. Kinda." As if her life's work were a side hustle. And now, today, on Tyler's wedding day, Madison had arrived at the sprawling Pacific estate in her charcoal gray Tesla estate car in a sea of Bentleys and was told, by a flustered wedding planner, that her seat had been moved. Not to the back of the reception hall. Not to a less prominent table. To the kitchen. Not a metaphor. A literal metal folding table near the ovens, hastily draped with linen. "They said you'd understand," the planner had whispered, eyes apologetic. She didn't. Not in the slightest. And as Madison stood in the shadow of the grand reception tent, watching her mother laugh with strangers in pastel chiffon, she realized something with brutal clarity: this wasn't a mistake. It was a message. Stay in your place. Her date, Alex Kim, a venture capitalist who saw her for more than her last funding round, placed a gentle hand on the small of her back. "Want to leave?" he murmured. She nodded once but didn't move. Not yet. Somewhere deep in the tent, Douglas Hawthorne was giving a toast, holding court at the head table surrounded by developers, lawyers, and potential partners. Her father stood nearby, nodding with pride as if he belonged among them. Madison's name didn't come up once. Neither did Vertex. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. A message from her operations director. Payment confirmed. Phase 2 greenlit. That contract. Already in motion. Her software was running everything. Logistics, resource distribution, delivery chains. The engine behind a billion-dollar expansion. She wasn't just a vendor. She was the foundation. And they had stuck her in the kitchen. Madison turned to Alex. "I need a minute." "Take your time," he said softly, his eyes warm with something that felt like faith. She found a restroom tucked near the back of the house, locked the door, and stared at herself in the mirror. The navy blue dress was perfectly tailored. powerfully understated. Her signature. She looked every bit the CEO. So why did she feel like a teenager again, begging for a seat at a table that would never truly belong to her? Memories flickered. Tyler's football games their parents never missed, while her science fairs were forgotten. The MIT acceptance letter pinned to the fridge for a week, then replaced by Tyler's internship announcement. The startup years she'd spent eating ramen and sleeping on the floor of her own office while her family said things like, "You could always work for your brother if it doesn't work out." She didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, she pulled out her phone and dialed Gregory, her coup. "Madison," he answered immediately. "Is everything all right?" "Yes." "Terminate the Hawthorne contract. Effective immediately." There was a pause. "You're sure?" "Positive. I'll handle the fallout." She ended the call and walked out with the calm of a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. She found Alex waiting near the valet, arms crossed, looking equal parts concerned and proud. "You are not going back in?" he asked. "Oh, I'm going back in," she said. "But not as someone's sister." They returned just as the dinner service began. Waiters buzzed past them. Toasts echoed. Madison didn't stop until she reached the head table. Tyler's jaw dropped when he saw her. "Madison," Douglas Hawthorne began, rising politely. "This is a surprise." She smiled tightly. "I thought I'd stop by and say goodbye." "Leaving already?" Douglas asked. "Yes," she said. "But before I go, I just wanted to let you all know that the $30 million contract between Hawthorne Developments and Vertex Systems has been terminated." A silence fell over the table. Tyler blinked. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious," she said, her voice ice smooth. "You're welcome to find another company to rebuild everything we've already installed. I'm sure that won't delay your expansion by more than a year." "Madison," Douglas started, "surely we can discuss." "No. We can't." She looked directly at Tyler. "You let this happen. You knew where they seated me." "It wasn't personal," he stammered. "It never is," she said. "Until it is." And then she turned and walked away through the marble archway, past the orchids and the chandeliers, out into the night where her value wasn't determined by proximity to power, but by the empire she built with her own hands. Have you ever had to walk away from people you love just to honor your own worth? What would you do if your family forced you to choose between respect and belonging? Because what Madison didn't know, what none of them knew, was that someone else had been watching. Someone with a past just as buried, and a secret that could shatter everything. And in part 2, that secret comes to light. The rain came early that morning, sweeping across the glass windows of Madison Carter's penthouse like a quiet reckoning. She sat at the kitchen island, untouched coffee cooling in front of her, staring at her phone as if it might explain what had happened. 17 emails. 5 missed calls. 3 voicemails from Douglas Hawthorne, each one more urgent than the last. One was from Laura Simmons, his head of operations, practically begging for a conversation to find a path forward. But the one that lingered wasn't from any executive. It was from a sender she hadn't seen in over 2 decades. Subject line: "It's time we talked." From Elise Carter. Her aunt. The family ghost. Madison clicked the email open slowly, the way you would open a letter from a dead person. Madison. I watched what happened at the wedding. Word gets around. What you did canceling the contract, walking out with your dignity intact. I want you to know something. You didn't just draw a line. You broke a curse. Call me. If you're ready. Below the message, a single number. No explanation. No apology. She hadn't seen Elise since she was 9. Her father's older sister had once been a rising star in the male-dominated design world until she wasn't. One Thanksgiving she was there, laughing too loud and telling Madison stories about art school. The next year, gone. No explanation. No mention. Her name was erased like a typo. That morning, Madison stared at the number for a long time before tapping call. "Hello," came a smooth, familiar voice. "It's me," Madison said. "It's been a while. I was wondering if you'd call," Elise replied, calm and unshaken. "I figured your parents probably didn't tell you why I left." "They didn't tell me anything," Madison said. "Just that you moved on." There was a pause. "They always made it sound so clean, didn't they?" Elise finally said. "I built my own firm. Had 12 employees. Was doing interiors for luxury properties your grandfather was developing. But when the company was handed down, your father got it all. They said it was tradition. Said I was better off doing something gentler." "Sounds familiar," Madison said, her voice tightening. "You think Tyler is the first golden boy this family chose?" Elise said. "We've been grooming sons and sidelining daughters for 3 generations." Madison was quiet. The ache she'd felt the night of the wedding, the ache of invisibility, was no longer just hers. It was legacy. "There's something else," Elise added. "Something you should know." Madison felt her breath hitch. "What?" "Your father was planning to offer Tyler a stake in the Hawthorne-Carter redevelopment project," Elise said. "And not just because of the marriage. Because of your deal. They were using your contract as leverage." Madison sat back, her spine rigid. "They were using me to elevate him." "They always do," Elise said. "That's why your stand at the wedding shook them. You disrupted the plan." Madison let out a shaky breath. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve to know the truth," Elise said. "And because I need to ask you for something." Madison blinked. She hadn't expected that. "My firm's still standing," Elise said. "Smaller, leaner. But it's mine. And there's a proposal on my desk for a multi-unit mixed-use property in Culver City. The client just backed out. I need a tech partner. You want to work with me?" Madison asked, stunned. "I want to work for you," Elise corrected. "Not as family. As a woman who's tired of playing small so a man can play big." Madison looked out at the rain-soaked skyline. "I'll think about it," she said. "I hope you do." "And Madison?" "Yeah. I'm proud of you." After they hung up, Madison sat in silence. The ache was still there, but now it had context. It was generational. Systemic. It wasn't just that she had been overlooked. It was that her success was inconvenient to the structure her family had built around Tyler. Around men. Later that afternoon, as she walked into the office, her assistant handed her a thick envelope. "This was hand-delivered," Sarah said. "From Hawthorne's legal team." Inside was a formal apology from Douglas Hawthorne. Pages of signed documentation. A new proposal. This time, it was addressed directly to Madison Carter, CEO of Vertex Systems. No mention of Tyler. No middlemen. And a handwritten note in crisp penmanship. "I underestimated you. That will not happen again." But as she looked through the proposal, Madison's hands froze. Buried within the legalese was a clause 9.6, in consideration of services rendered, Hawthorne Developments shall retain the right to license Vertex software to its affiliate partners for a duration of 5 years. Her eyes narrowed. They were trying to quietly appropriate her software under a licensing agreement. No oversight. No royalties. No control. It was betrayal, again. Only dressed in apology. She stood there, the document in one hand, and Elise's proposal still fresh in her mind. Two paths. One familiar, paved with corporate gloss and men who smiled while gutting her work. One uncertain, raw and unglamorous, but hers. When everything you've worked for is dangled in front of you with strings attached, do you take the deal or cut the strings and build something on your own terms? Because Madison's decision wouldn't just change her future. It would expose a secret buried deep in the Hawthorne family and set off a chain reaction no one was ready for. See what happens next in Part 3. The night Madison made her decision, the city seemed quieter. Not still, Los Angeles never truly slept, but quieter in a way that mirrored her own inner shift. The noise of proving, striving, pleasing, had finally dulled. She stood on her balcony, a breeze catching the edges of her robe, and reread Elise's proposal by the soft light of the kitchen. It was bold, ambitious, and unpolished. No luxury towers or billion-dollar contracts. Just clean, community-focused design. A repurposed complex for single mothers and underserved families, with an integrated tech system to track energy usage, public access, and tenant needs. Not glamorous. Not headline-worthy. But deeply human. The contrast to Hawthorne's offer was staggering. Their glossy rebrand and corporate apology had the weight of money behind it, but not trust. Not truth. And in the end, that was what tipped her. The next morning, Madison walked into the Vertex boardroom and placed both offers on the table. Gregory, her coup, looked at her like she'd walked in with two ticking clocks. "Which one are we moving on?" he asked. She didn't hesitate. "Elise." There was a beat of silence. "Are you sure?" he asked carefully. "Yes," she said. "We've spent years building things for people who would never invite us to sit beside them. It's time we build something for people who know what it means to be left out." Gregory smiled. "Then let's make it count." 2 days later, the official rejection was sent to Hawthorne Developments. Clean. Professional. Irrevocable. Madison didn't expect a response. But one came. It arrived in the form of a package, delivered by courier, no name on the envelope, just a company crest, Hawthorne and Vale. Inside was a photo. Black and white. Dated 1983. It showed a much younger Douglas Hawthorne, and next to him, a woman who looked exactly like Elise. They stood in front of a half-built structure, arms around each other, smiling like secrets. On the back of the photo was a single line, handwritten in faded ink. "We were supposed to build it together." Madison sat down. She called Elise immediately. There was a long pause when she described the photo. "I thought he'd buried that," Elise finally said, her voice tight. "You and Douglas?" Madison asked, her breath catching. "We started the firm together," Elise said. "Back when we were young, reckless, and naive enough to believe merit would matter more than bloodlines and gender." "What happened?" "I was pregnant." The words landed like a stone in a still lake. "He said we'd handle it. Then he made a deal with my father, your grandfather, to buy out my shares and disappear quietly. He kept the firm. I kept the shame." Madison's throat went dry. "He took everything." "No," Elise said. "He took what I thought was everything. But I still had my name. And eventually, I had my voice." "Does he know you told me?" "I don't care anymore," Elise said. "Let them all know. This silence, this pattern, someone has to end it." Madison looked again at the photo. For a moment, the years collapsed. She saw two people standing on the edge of possibility. Then one pushed the other over so he could build his empire alone. She thought of her mother, of Tyler, of how often silence was disguised as peace. Not anymore. Over the following weeks, news of the cancelled Hawthorne contract spread quietly, like a ripple beneath a frozen lake. Some investors pulled back. Others leaned in closer. But something else happened, too. Women started reaching out. Emails. Handwritten letters. One woman, a software engineer in San Jose, wrote, "Watching you walk away from a $30 million deal made me realize I didn't have to stay at a company that refused to promote me. I gave my notice yesterday. Another, you probably don't remember me, but I was in the audience at that tech panel last year. I started my own app this spring. It's messy. And mine. Madison read every message. She responded to everyone. And when Visible launched officially her mentorship platform for women entrepreneurs, over 1,000 women applied in the first week. Elise's project broke ground at fall. Madison stood with her in a field of dust and steel framing, the skyline rising behind them like possibility. They wore hard hats and boots. They laughed at how unglamorous it all was. But there was light in it. Integrity. A kind of truth you couldn't fake in a pitch deck. Months later, Tyler reached out. A simple message. Can we talk? No business. Just me and you. They met at a coffee shop near the beach, where they used to go as teenagers. He looked tired, older. Like a man who'd finally realized the spotlight came with a cost. I messed up, he said. Yes, Madison said. You did. I didn't know how to compete with you, he admitted. So I tried to make you smaller instead. Her silence was its own kind of grace. I don't expect forgiveness, he added. She looked out at the ocean. Then don't ask for it. Just be different. He nodded, quietly. I miss my sister, he said. I'm still here, she replied. But you'll have to meet me where I stand now. When they parted, she didn't know if they'd ever be close again. But for the first time, the possibility didn't hurt. It felt honest. The past would never be erased. But it could be rewritten. The final twist came not with drama, but with choice. A simple, powerful one. She no longer needed to prove anything. She was no longer building to be seen. She was building because it mattered. Because she mattered. And because from now on, she would never ever sit at a table where she wasn't welcome. She'd bring her own. What part of Madison's story resonated with you the most? Comment 100 if the story moved you. Where are you watching from today? Share this with someone who needs a reminder of their worth. Thank you for watching Life Stories.